Scandal on Earth Prime 257090-Beta, where, after nearly a decade of random typing, the Million Monkey Project has finally recreated a classic work of art, and it wasn't by Shakespeare.
Meanwhile, on Earth Prime 387129-Epsilon, the Bush administration has entered into a pact with the Democratic Union of Great Old Ones, Dagu, in return for creating a portal that will allow representatives of Dagu to travel to our dimension. They have agreed to aid in the war in Iraq. Critics of the government claim that there is nothing democratic about the Great Old Ones, that they are, in fact, ancient beings of pure evil whose goal is to enslave humanity. Could the price for victory in Iraq be too high?
And in Universe 887004-Omega, the ungulative trimestries has declared universal Upanishad again.
Good evening. I'm Alison Thumbwinkle Metonymy.
And I'm Adenine Bourgeoiseron.
And you're listening to Alternate Reality News Service 3's Multiverse Tonight. We'll have more on those stories later in the broadcast, but we start with the latest on the big floating heads on Earth Prime 483884-Gamma. The Alternate Reality News Service's transdimensional traffic reporter Arturo Big Bang Booty reports.
I'm standing outside Grand Central Station in...
Yo, you're on TV right now.
No, actually, this is radio.
Oh, well. You then.
That's right, I'm in New York. Above me, the city's big floating head watches over all of us. It's a massive thing, easily the size of a hot air balloon. I mean, it's really, really big. You could park a car in one of its nostrils. That's how big it is. If you used the forehead as a billboard, it could be seen over 100 miles away. There is a reason they call them big floating heads, and the reason is that they are big. At 12:37 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a mere hour and 27 minutes ago, the big floating heads that appeared simultaneously over 30 major cities across the world and Paris, precisely 6 years and 1 month ago, spoke. And as we should have expected, although few of us did, what they said was complete nonsense.
Express vernacular recon.
That was the big floating head from Perth, Afghanistan. Perhaps surprisingly for heads the size of a football field, not a professional field, perhaps more like a high school football field, which is still plenty big for a head. Let me tell you, the big floating heads did not speak in a booming bass, but a soft whisper.
I had almost forgotten that the big fat heads were even there.
Said cuticle enhancement surgeon and New Yorker, Marilyn Monroe Killer.
It was like the time Grammy came to stay with us. Most of the time she sat in her corner casting gloom and doom predictions on the family with yarrow stalks. Then, just when you'd almost forgotten she was there, blam! She'd say something like, "When the sun is benign, search out Considine." Nobody ever really had the nerve to ask her what she was talking about.
Concertina goiter for Boston.
Nah, Grammy Monroe Killer never said that.
What exactly are the big floating heads? 3 different answers have been given by different groups of headologists, those who study the big floating heads. The first group believes that the big floating heads are projections of the consciousness of people who live in another dimension. For this group, the words are their attempt to communicate with us, although they are either really dumb or very bad at learning languages. This view is represented by Monique Mercury, a feminist studies professor at Wellington College with an amateur's interest in the big floating heads.
Some people initially thought the big floating heads were manifestations of a deity. Many of them found peace in the knowledge that they were constantly being watched. In cities where the heads appeared, marriages were saved, crime rates went down. Jim Carrey movies couldn't be played in theaters. They believed that theirs was a loving God. Of course, they don't know what to make of the recent statement. Some followers have become disenchanted with the incomprehensibility of the head. Others are tracking down as many of the statements as possible, hoping to eventually come up with enough to feed a holy book. Good luck with that.
According to Mercury, headology was developed by a rational response to this irrational belief. And she expects headology will someday supplant it.
Headology is superior. Headology is scientific. See?
Citywide wagering floorboard.
That was the big floating head that hovers over Toronto, Newfoundland. The second group of headologists argue that the first group has to be wrong. They point to the dozens of headcams set up to capture the existence of the big floating heads, which show that they never take a break, never blink, never appear to breathe, never even move their eyeballs. Speaking for this group is Aloysius Pasha Krugman, primary headologist in the sociology department of the University of Toronto.
Yeah, kids will change their webcams on the strangest things. As a parent, I should be appalled at the way my children are wasting their time with the most advanced technologies available to man. But as a scientist, I find myself exhilarated by the research potential.
Krugman believes that the big floating heads are actually computer-generated projections, possibly from another dimension, but just as possibly from another planet in this dimension.
The fact that they don't blink could be a programming error, or their programmers might have felt it wasn't worth the bandwidth. Lord knows we've all had to deal with less than optimal software that was shipped to make a deadline. Say, why are we doing this interview on a roller coaster?
Board stripe liniment.
That was the big floating head over the flat of the Swanbrook Twins, 27 Zatapatik Road, Leicester. The third group of headologists uses Occam's razor to reject both of the previous theories. According to freelance headologist Carl Rorschach, who is currently on a 2.5-week limited contract with the Gotterdammerung Institute of Sri Lanka.
As you see, we don't need...
You don't have a Swedish accent?
No.
I thought every academic had a Swedish accent.
Well, obviously not.
Oh.
Well, we don't need...
Could you answer my question with a Swedish accent?
What?
Just to, avoid confusion.
Okay, Swedish. We
Oh,
don't need...
you're right. That's not working. Just use your natural voice.
I see. We don't... Oh, yes. Well, you see, we don't need to posit other dimensions or life on other planets. The big floating heads are actually projections. You see what I'm saying? Projections from the unconscious of the human race. I mean, at first we thought they represented our collective superego. But now, what they seem to be coming directly from is our ids.
To say that the three camps do not get along would be to understate how much the three camps do not get along. 2 years ago, at the third biennial Headology Conference and Talent Show, Rorschach and Mercury got into a heated debate about whether the transdimensional projection was responsible for a distortion in the sizes of the heads, or whether the alien life forms were really that big. Interpretations of what happened next differ, but most versions of the story agree that Mercury had to have surgery on her left eye to remove a canopy that had lodged there, while the possibility that Rorschach would be capable of having children had decreased by over 23.4763%.
Yeah, I heard all about the fighting between the headologists. I wish they'd get their shit together. I mean, if smart people don't know what's going on, how are ordinary people like me ever supposed to know?
How indeed. For the alternate, we're not on TV. Do you see a camera? This is radio. For the alternate reality news service, this is Arturo Big Bang Booty.
That was alternate reality news service transdimensional traffic reporter Arturo Big Bang Booty's report from Earth Prime 483884-Gamma. After the break, while his fellows continue to busily toil away at recreating a play by Shakespeare, one clever member of the Million Monkey Project has almost completely recreated Franz Kafka's short story, The Metamorphosis. Can the humanities survive? We have an exclusive interview with the semi-literate Simeon next. Stay with us.
The moniker's Marlowe, just Marlowe. I used to have a first name, once upon a time, but so few people used it that it fell into disrepair and was condemned by the City Planning Commission. What are you gonna do? I used to be a cynical, world-weary private eye, but that was before the House Un-American Activities Committee, before Vietnam, before Watergate, before Disney bought Marvel. You get the idea. Now everybody's cynical and world-weary, and being a private eye just doesn't pay the bills. So I'm on retainer from the alternate reality news service. That's right, I'm a private freelance narrator now. This is a little story I like to call Episode 1, The Realities Leak. Our story begins, as so many alternate reality news service stories do, with the threat of violence.